She sells seashell.
Melanie Avalon of the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast is back. Thank you so much. I'm glad to reconnect, and we have an exciting show that may meander in different directions, unlike our usual tightly confined and question themes. So we're gonna have some fun today.
Brad Kearns, thank you so much for having me back. I am so excited to be here. I love talking with you. You are pretty awesome.
I received many emails from people saying that was the time that you interviewed me, which was a lengthy interview, and the questions were so very well researched and free flowing, and people said that was the best interview I've heard you give, Brad. Also a compliment to the hostess, of course. So thank you so much. It was definitely my favorite show because you were so prepared, and we kind of took it deep, and it really got me thinking about myself and all those things. Like it wasn't just the breezy pat answers that you often find yourself backed into a corner when they say, "So tell me about your product," or whatever, you know.
That makes me so happy. That was such an epic show. And I really liked it because it was about a topic that was like your forte that I am just not knowledgeable on. So that was really fun. My listeners have been loving it. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
it.
And also offline, I've developed an exciting new hobby thanks to you, and that is the increased awareness of the crap that we put on our body, our skin, and these endocrine disruptors that are so common in the consumer marketplace. So you got a lot to say about that. I would love for you to educate the audience. I know we have so many things on our to-do list for doing the right workouts and choosing these foods and avoiding these foods, but this is a huge deal, and it's really concerning to me because it's another example of how mainstream marketing, consumerism, the giant corporate machines have very little concern for human health and are dispensing these products that they're telling us to stick in our mouth, rub on our skin, whatever, wash our clothes with, and they can be a significant health challenge.
It's really, really shocking. And I think it's really interesting because it has such a profound potential effect on our health, on our daily experience of our lives, on our weight, on future generations, but we don't really think about it that much. It's just so prevalent. So I probably got obsessed with this concept because
That's your
I,
job. That's her job, people.
I know,
She
I
goes
know.
deep and then reports the news to us.
I know. The first thing I quote cleaned up in my life is probably what a lot of people first quote clean up in their life, which was my diet. It was because I went low carb first, and that's when I realized that the effect of like what you eat can have on your body, rather than just for weight loss. And then I did a paleo diet, and that's when I realized, oh, all these additives in
Mm.
foods actually have an effect as well. Because prior to that, I was already doing low carb, I was doing intermittent fasting. So I was like, it won't make much difference if I like, what's the difference between like normal keto, low carb, and like paleo, where you don't have these additives and these other things? And I didn't think it would make that much of a difference, but it really did. Um, so how did you get started with keto or paleo or things?
uh, uh, Cold turkey slap in the face from Mark Sisson in 2008 because we decided to work on this Primal Blueprint project together, and it was a major. It was supposed to be a minor kind of communication to further some of the comments on his blog about the ancestral style eating, and of course that goes back to 1988, beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. Boyd Eaton publishing a paper about the Paleolithic diets around the world, and some study of that, and realizing that, hey, our ancestors ate meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. They were really healthy. They had better bone structure. They had larger brains, all this stuff. And then, it took many, many years. Lauren Cordain first published a book in 2002 about the paleo diet. And then come 2009, when our book came out, 2010, Rob Wolf's book, then this movement was starting to take hold, and people were starting to actually realize that if we modeled the diet of our ancestors, it might be a good idea rather than modeling the diet of the billboards and the fast food restaurants. And so for me, I've been interested in healthy eating since I was a teenager. I was a runner. I bought the books of the day back then, like Eat to Win was a #1 best-selling book about healthy eating. There's another one called uh, Fit for Life by the Diamonds. And I met them in Los Angeles and went to their house. And here's the #1 best-selling authors. And they have this book where you could only eat fruit until 12 noon. And then you could start eating your proteins. And then at a certain time on the clock. And it was all this stuff was, in my brain for my whole adult life. But, I was also training for triathlons and eating a ton of calories. And so I had a pretty healthy foundation for what we considered healthy back then. But it was a big leap to ditch all grains from the diet. And that was kind of the assignment from Mark saying, these grains didn't exist until 10,000 years ago. So the Paleolithic diet doesn't have any of this. And so I was like, well, okay, what about oatmeal? He's like, that's a grain. I'm like, what about granola? Nope, sorry, that's a grain. I had to learn the basic of, no bread, no rice, no wheat, no pasta. And so immediately, of course, I can't say that I lost 50 pounds or my skin conditions went away, but I did notice a distinct improvement in things like this routine roller coaster that a lot of us live on from eating so many processed foods. And then it got parsed into different low carb and keto. And I jumped into keto in 2017. So that's, 8 years into eating this paleo primal style. And then, for experimental purposes, after talking to the great leaders like you've had on our show, we've had on our shows, Dom D'Agostino, Peter Attia, now it's time to cut carbs down to 50 grams a day and start making these ketones. And that was an interesting experience for me because I realized that it should be considered a tool, these strict and extreme diets that an individual can try out and test out for health optimization, including carnivore, which we just talked about before we turned on record, that I'm extremely fascinated by the compelling argument presented by Dr. Paul Saladino, Dr. Sean Baker, the other leaders that, the most nutrient dense foods are from the animal kingdom and the plants may or may not be harming you. And everything's worth reconsidering, including the salad as the centerpiece of a healthy diet, which we've been writing about for years. So I try to maintain an open mind, resolve to think critically, not blanket dismiss things out of hand, which is a huge risk factor for not only your credibility, but your personal growth. And so I'm kind of making a very long-winded answer to your question when I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but it's an ongoing journey. And now I'm going to back up and conclude my long-winded answer, which is if we can just clean up our diets like you described, and that means eliminate these nutrient deficient, heavily processed foods, which are the centerpiece of today's diet, we're well on our way to optimum health. And the rest of it really could be considered fine tuning and optimization, with the exception of going vegan, which is a whole nother aside where we're eliminating most of the nutrient dense foods. Then we have a problem. And everyone takes a breath, including B.rad.
I did not know that history of yours. I learned so much just now. We're very much on the same page, especially with the whole being open-minded thing. I just think that is so, so important, and I'm just always seeking truth. And I just want to bring on or seek out all different perspectives and experiment and find what works for me. And that's just really important. So same page there.
Nice.
But so going and to clarify, I'm actually not keto now. And I haven't been for a while, but I do intermittent fasting. But in any case, so when I did the paleo stuff, that's when I started realizing the effects that these non-food ingredients were having on our bodies. And then I got, I was going to say a mosaic of a few different things happened. I got heavy metal toxicity. I was living in an apartment that had mold, and carbon monoxide poisoning every time I was using the oven. So I started feeling not well. And, I started focusing on this concept of toxins in our body. And that's when I realized that our skincare and our makeup, especially as women with the makeup, every single day is just a huge, huge source of exposure. But I don't know, I was still pretty casual about it when I first learned about it. And it was honestly the last thing for me to actually change because I don't know, you have the products that you like, you have your makeup, you have your skincare. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. So I had cleaned up my diet. I cleaned up my environment, like my apartment, my air, all of that. But it was really hard for me to make the switch. But when I started looking into the research, it's really, really shocking because if you think about it, when we're putting things on our body, like different skincare, makeup, it's granting it direct access to our bloodstream. So we're putting it on, it goes in, the compounds end up in our bloodstream. And there is, you touched on this, but there's essentially no regulation in like by the FDA of cosmetics and skincare. Like it is shocking. If you go to the FDA's website and look at their regulations, I'm paraphrasing, but they basically, I think they've banned, it's not many. It's somewhere between it's around a dozen compounds that they've banned as being toxic. Europe has banned thousands of them. So that's a big difference. And what the FDA says is basically, there's a paragraph about how basically they say there's not something about there not being enough evidence or conclusive evidence. And also something about how they don't really have the time and resources to invest to it. That's like the takeaway. So it's basically up to us to do the research. But these compounds, one of the problems about whether or not they're quote toxic is the studies don't really, like the toxicity studies don't usually reflect the way we're actually using them. So they'll take a compound, they'll
eat some lipstick, like on the Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah.
Did you see the Super Bowl commercial where the celebrity, I forget who it was, just took a bite of lipstick, and it was a commercial for Uber Eats or something?
She did.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
So lipstick, for example, fun fact, they did a study where they tested about 100 different brands of lipstick, and almost every single brand tested high for lead. And lead, the half-life of lead in your body is up to 30 years. So that means when you put on some conventional lipstick, you're probably putting lead in your body. 30 years later, maybe half of it is out of your body. So no big deal. But what was I going to say? Oh, so the actual toxicity studies though. So they're not that applicable to the way we use these compounds or experience them in real life, because they'll look at, they usually look at them in isolated amounts. So like one toxin, its effect on a cell in vitro. We are exposed to these compounds like cumulatively. So it's not just like one little exposure. Like if we're putting on every single day, we're getting that over and over and over. So it's building up. So that's not really applicable. It doesn't account for the synergistic effect. So, or I think it's called the cocktail effect. So some toxic compounds, when they interact with each other, they by themselves might not be toxic, but together they can become toxic, and or by themselves, they might be a little bit toxic. Together, they're even more toxic. So when we're putting on all of these different things, that's a problem. And like I said, these compounds can actually build up over time. So the toxicity studies aren't that helpful. Where I have a lot of other thoughts, but do you have any thoughts?
There's possibly some special interest lobbying involved, as there is with food, drugs, supplements. Anyone who's got an interest is going to try to steer things in the direction they prefer. And so not only are the studies not helpful, there's arguably, we have to take a step back and think if they're legit or not.
Yes. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because so even if you look at a product and you see all the ingredients, you might think you know everything that's in there. But if you see the word fragrance, the reason that is probably not there to be a fragrance, it might be, but the reason it's there politically is in the 1960s, there was an act surrounding this where they said that companies could put fragrances in to protect their trade secret formulas. So anything can be a fragrance, anything. And they don't have to tell you. So that just goes out the window with with what you might actually be putting on your body. So it's really shocking. And then, so these actual compounds I keep talking about, these toxic compounds, they are often endocrine disruptors, which your audience may be familiar with, but basically they mess with our hormones. And I know, so this actually ties into the whole diet thing. There's the whole debate in the diet world about weight gain and weight loss. And is it calories or is it other things? And regardless of where you fall on that, there's a lot of really fascinating research on obesogens. Are you familiar with obesogens?
Something that makes you fat. Oh,
Yes.
mercy. And it goes outside the food category.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of these compounds that are obesogens, they directly affect our metabolic health, and they can even affect our fat cells to make us store weight, gain weight, less likely to gain weight, or less likely to lose weight. Mm-hmm. And they often end up in our fat cells because when we take them in, our bodies register them as toxic. So to protect us, because our bodies are our friends, they shuffle them into our fat cells. In the fat cells, they can mess with the metabolism of fat cells to do what I just said, where they actually make the fat cells less likely to burn fat and more likely to gain fat. And they can actually make the cells, they create a more inflammatory state. Mm-hmm. And then the fat cells actually can recruit more fat cells. Like it makes you more likely to just make even more fat mm-hmm. cells. It can also, fat cells aside, they also can mess with hormones like insulin, ghrelin, our hunger hormone, leptin, our satiety hormone. So you may be doing really awesome in the diet sphere, and the exercise sphere, but if you're putting these on your body, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, and it can be a huge hurdle for weight loss. So.
Dr. Kate Shanahan gives an extremely similar description to what you just offered about the refined industrial seed oils. They get consumed and integrated into fat cells, and then they are rendered dysfunctional. In other words, they're unable to mobilize and burn. And so you tend to store this type of fat that you eat. And that's interesting that the non-edibles have that same chemical impact. But anything that interferes with healthy fat metabolism, such as being poisoned and what have you, that's troublesome, because like you said, if we're trying to nail our diet and exercise objectives, but we feel tired, we feel weak, we don't recover well from workouts, and we're hungry for quick energy carbohydrates because we're not good at burning fat, we're going to fail miserably, even with great intentions and devotion and willpower.
Exactly. It reminds me of, I feel like this is a reference. Have you seen Mean Girls?
A little. I think I've seen some scenes.
It reminds me of the main Regina George, the main mean girl in that, and she's eating this diet bar that she thinks is a diet bar, but really it's like a weight gain bar. I feel like that's what it's like. Like you could be doing all the things, but you're actually sending signals for the opposite. Mm-hmm. I do love Dr. Shanahan though, by the way. It is a very similar concept. Something else, and you're talking about you mentioned the word poison. So I had a huge epiphany when I interviewed Dr. Jason Fung. Have you had him on your show?
No, I've enjoyed his books and referenced them often.
Yes, so he's fabulous. I brought him on my show for his book, The Cancer Code, for an episode on cancer, actually, which was nice because I hadn't done an episode on cancer. And also he's really well known in the fasting world, but it was nice to kind of talk to him about a different topic. But reading his book was the first time I finally understood why carcinogens create cancer. And a lot of these compounds, these endocrine disruptors, are carcinogens and have carcinogenic properties. And the way he described it, this was like such an epiphany for me. So basically, cells are in our ideal world, we have our body cells, they're functioning, they're healthy, they're great. If they get damaged, or if they, for whatever reason, are no longer working correctly, the body can kill them via a process called apoptosis, because we don't want dysfunctioning cells hanging around. So the body normally will just like get rid of them. The problem happens when we have our cells that they get like slightly damaged. So they're not up to par. Like they're not functioning the way they should be, but they're not damaged enough that the body gets rid of them. Instead, they're in this like gray zone. And so what they can actually do when this happens is kind of go rogue, because they're no longer like working synergistically with the body, but the body's not getting rid of them. So that's when it's hypothesized that they can switch to, glycolysis and take on their own entity, their own life and entity, and do their own thing. But it's constant exposure to carcinogens. So like, just like a little bit of toxins, that can create this process. Because if the toxin were so bad that it just killed the cell, then the cell would be gone. Like it needs to kill it just enough to make it dysfunctional and make it still there. And then it can become cancerous and take on a life of its own. So when you're putting on skincare makeup with carcinogens, that's what happens. It's just ironic that it's like, if it were more toxic, you might not have that effect, because it would just get rid of the cell. But because it's just enough, this is what results. So
yeah, I guess that's the difference between acute illness and lifelong slide into accelerated aging, demise, disease through mild, poisoning and adverse health practices chipping away at it a daily basis, rather than, if you eat some bad food, you get food poisoning, you're in bed, your system is turned upside down, and then 3 days later, you're okay.
Yeah, that's a brilliant analogy. Exactly.
Okay, so you talk a little bit about lipstick, and let's get into all the categories that we need to watch out for, and maybe some do's and don'ts.
Yeah. So, really anything that you put on your body has the potential for this issue. So for the ladies, everything on your face, all your makeup, there is probably, you're going to more likely get more issues with things that are more directly entering your body. So like the lipstick really is something to watch for. But anything going on you is the potential for that. And then like skin cleansers, lotions, your entire routine, that's a problem. Deodorant is huge, huge, huge. I bet a lot of people I feel like the one skincare thing that people are becoming more aware about in general, like the normal public, is the normal public. I'm not like people who are not normally obsessed
the average
with stuff.
Health enthusiast,
Yes,
not the extreme
yes.
biohacker. We got you.
Yes. Would be aluminum and deodorant. So getting aluminum
well, there's
free.
antiperspirant and deodorant, and the antiperspirant is what stops the sweating, and that has the aluminum. I'd love to know how bad that is, because I'm kind of like, I make a half-hearted attempt to try out the natural products, and then I'm traveling and I get the little travel size of Secret or whatever the consumer the mainstream brand, and so I need to up my game in this area as well.
Yeah, I've there's a lot of clinical literature on the toxicity of aluminum. And I think it's a huge, huge issue, especially something as well. Oh, this is so sad. So for ladies, when we have children, there's actually a huge detox process that happens where we actually lose a lot of our toxic burden through the placenta, and it goes into the newborn. So if like with these compounds being built up on our skin over time and in our system, if you have a baby, you actually shuttle them into the newborn, which is really shocking. And aluminum would be one there. Also, just if you just think about it, I feel like we sweat for a reason. And so aluminum works by physically blocking our sweat ducts. I just like from a very, just thinking about it normally, it doesn't seem like it's not working it's not, what's the word? It's like not working. It's not supporting our body the way our body is supposed to work.
It's like a drug stopping inflammation. Your pain goes away, but you've just overridden the natural inflammatory processes that the body needs to work through in favor of getting some instant relief, and at the expense of there's always a long-term consequence. There's a side effect with every single drug, an adverse side effect. And so I suppose that's the same for chemicaling up for the busy day.
Yeah, exactly. So I made the switch. That was one of the first things I switched, was the deodorant. And it wasn't that bad once I was on the flip side of the transition.
You broke through to the other side.
Yeah. There is sort of like I don't know if it's not like a withdrawal, but there is like a transition phase. Interestingly, I follow a very non-processed diet, and a very clean lifestyle and environment. And I don't normally get body odor, but if I have some sort of, it doesn't happen very often, but if I, for some reason, have something that has a lot of ingredients in it, I will, which is very telling to me. It happens like if I get sick and I have a lot of like conventional cough drops or something, I will actually start getting body odor, which is really interesting. I don't know if I'm just like, my body's just like so ready to just shoot stuff out of
your skin is detoxing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But back to your question. So the makeup, the skin, the deodorant, the hair products, that's huge. So shampoo and conditioner, and these ingredients, a really, really helpful resource for people is the EWG, if they're not familiar with that. And the EWG has a skincare, like a skin database. I have to look up.
What does that stand for?
Environmental Working Group. So they go through and they rate the toxicity of pretty much every compound you can think of, not just skincare, like for everything. So it's a great resource for cleaning products, anything where you want to look up food, anywhere you want to look up ingredients. But they have a specific database for skincare and makeup products, and they will rate the toxicity of all the ingredients and give it a rating. Yeah. Between like 1 and 7, 1 and 7 or 1 and 8. So that's a really, really good resource for listeners to, check out their current products. And what I suggest doing, because it's really overwhelming. Like I said, it was literally the last thing I switched over because I was overwhelmed. I had the products that I knew worked. But I just, one by one, as I would run out of something, I would not get the same one again. Something that's a little bit that can make it even harder though, is I remember when I first sat down, I was like, okay, I'm going to change. I'm going to like do this. And I would go to the makeup store, or Ulta or Sephora, and I would look through all the different things, and it can be confusing for a few different reasons. One, things will often market themselves as natural, but that doesn't really mean anything. And natural isn't always safe.
Right.
So
natural, ricin from one of the most deadly poisons known to mankind is from rice, right?
Exactly.
Whatever.
Or like snake venom. That's natural, but you're not gonna.
Right. I mean, it seems to me that if you look on the ingredient label and you can understand what the ingredients rather than a bunch of chemicals, that's probably a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, yes, but then also synthetic compounds can be safe. So that's why it can be really confusing, but that's why the EWG app is really helpful in that regards. But on top of that, I think something that's really huge is going back to the heavy metals. So like I said, lipstick is really high in lead. The heavy metals is something that's not going to be on the label. So that's upsetting. And back to the makeup world.
Right. That's just a chemical the chemical nature of the makeup, whatever the ingredient is called, has lead in it.
Yes.
Right.
And many natural foundations for women are powders. And because they're quote natural, they're using these natural powders that are high in lead. So natural makeup can often be or lead and other heavy metals. So that contamination issue is a whole problem. So that's why you have to find brands that test for heavy metals. So yeah, it's some of these actual compounds that you might see commonly are things like parabens. Those are pretty common. They're used as preservatives in a lot of skincare and cosmetics. Phthalates are pretty common.
And these are toxic.
Yes.
Yeah. These are things you want to avoid. I know most of the candles are made out of parabens, which you do not want that air burning in your room.
Yes. I
paraben-free candles. Okay.
Yeah. I don't do candles anymore. My mom, for Christmas, my mom gave me, or no, for my birthday, she gave me this happy birthday candle. And she was like, I know you don't like candles, but it smells. She's like, it smells like
wonderful, like root beer. Yeah.
It smelled like birthday cake. And I was like, thanks, Mom. And then I gave it away to somebody else. But yeah, so these compounds are very, very prevalent. And there's so many of them. That's why rather than memorizing a laundry list, I think it's really helpful to use something like the EWG and look them up. But you'll get familiar as you start looking, and you'll be able to, kind of like you were saying earlier, you get a sense of what is in the right direction. But yeah,
it seems like antiperspirant and deodorant is a huge category because you're applying every single day a fairly large amount to an extremely porous area of the skin. Obviously, that's where we sweat and release special chemicals and whatnot. So as I understand it, like the antiperspirant is the chemical intervention so that you actually don't sweat, you don't accumulate moisture, and the deodorant is to mask the smell. But you're going to feel different when you use a deodorant versus an antiperspirant. And I sometimes appreciate that dry sensation if I'm wearing a dress shirt or something. And so that's kind of like my justification. But if it's that unhealthy, I guess we should put that high up in the rankings. And again, you said you were overwhelmed at one point, which is such a important thought to appreciate. And when we're trying to get compliance and people motivated and psyched to march forward and take control of their health, we can't overwhelm them. But we do want to put these thoughts out for consideration. And I'm going to end this show going through my various supplies and toss out the ones that are antiperspirant.
Yeah. And so there are non-aluminum forms of antiperspirants. So companies will use ingredients that will have a drying effect without the aluminum. And so it's really, there's a lot of different ones on the market. So there's a lot of different ones. And I find it really interesting that, different quote, natural safe ones tend to work for different people. Like, I don't know why that is. Like, because this is something I've thought about before. I'm like, in theory, I feel like there should be one that works like really well for everybody just based on the science of it. But people seemingly tend to react differently to different non-aluminum deodorant versions. But so like, I don't know. Can we talk about brands on here?
We might lose some sponsorship, but it's worth it. I don't want any garbage sponsors on this show. No way.
So a lot of people use Native. I know that one's good. I love Green Tidings. That's actually what I use. And then I love Beauty Counter. They have a good one as well.
These are deodorants you're talking about right now.
Yeah. Green Tidings is the one I use most consistently.
Dang, you go to a trade show like Paleo FX and I came home with a ton of choices. Like, these are emerging markets now. And it's really cool to see these generally the small operators are coming into the mix and providing an incredible alternative to toothpaste. I think maybe we should cover that one next, because that's another huge category where we're putting stuff in our mouth. And I've heard or read some, quick offhanded comments about taking the regular toothpaste, taking regular mouthwash, and this can have an adverse effect on your gut health and on your immune function in your mouth and all these things. We think we're killing germs in our mouth, but we're actually kind of compromising the the microbiome accordingly?
Yeah, fascinating that you bring that up. I'm really fascinated by the oral microbiome, and actually a company reached out to me. I'll have to connect to you if you're interested. Company reached out to me last week, and they do oral microbiome tests, I'm very excited about that. And they said their focus is going to be, because they're a new company, but their focus is a lot of what you just said, the role of our actual mouth care and how it affects things. And yeah, in general, though, the alcohol and the mouthwashes and the conventional toothpaste, I think can have a pretty negative effect on our oral microbiome. So yeah, that's a whole overwhelming rabbit hole as well. But I will say, just because like we said, it can be overwhelming. I really encourage listeners to, because what I did at the very beginning was I was like individually researching every single product and trying to find alternatives, and it was really overwhelming. If you can find one or two go-to brands that you trust the brand, then that really helps with making this shift, especially with things like, because we were mentioning things like the heavy metals, like that's something that you're not even going to be able to figure out yourself unless you know that the brand tests for heavy metals. So the majority of what I use is Beauty Counter, which I mentioned they do make a deodorant. But they were founded on a mission. So the founder of the company, it was either her friend, somebody that she knew, I don't know if it was her friend or a sister or somebody, had a miscarriage, and she started doing the research on endocrine disruptors and how they relate to fertility and miscarriages. And that's when she realized the overwhelming toxic burden of our skincare and makeup, and realized that there wasn't really any company that was really paying attention to this. And then on top of that, she really needed like I mentioned before, like the natural confusion, like a lot of the approaches to this are just to make these quote natural products that they might not even work that well. So what I love about Beauty Counter is they don't care if it's all natural. It's all just about testing for safety. So they have their list of 1,300 different ingredients that will never be in their products that are common in normal skincare and makeup. But then on top of that, they will have they'll have, what's the word? I keep using the word. They'll have compounds that aren't quote natural, because it's just about the safety. So everything is tested to be safe. They actually test every product 6 times for heavy metals. So that really spoke to my heart. And then on top of that, the products just really, really work, and they're really good quality. So like the makeup, which was the hardest thing for me to switch over. Tina Fey hosted the Golden Globes in 2021 or 2020, one of those years. And she wore all Beauty Counter makeup as the host. So so ladies, the makeup is high camera definition ready. So yeah, so I just like trust them as a brand, and I was able to switch over everything, shampoo and conditioner, makeup, all the things. If they don't have a product that I want or still need, then I go, and there are a few other different brands that I will use. I like Thrive Cosmetics a lot. So yeah, that helps with the overwhelmingness, at least a little bit. But I do think it's just up to us as consumers to make change here, because we can't rely on companies or government agencies to take care of our health.
Oh my gosh, it's so relatable to other things too, like food, and finding some trusted brands. And you and I live and breathe this stuff, so I have the opportunity to go and dig into some of these food manufacturers and ask them a few innocent questions. A lot of times it's by email, and the response I get, a lot of times it's lame-o city, and I know right away you guys don't give a crap, and they're trying to blow someone off. And then on many occasions, because I'm also picking something that seems good and I want to know more, they will pounce with a wonderfully detailed response to a single consumer about how passionate they are about sourcing the finest bean to bar original, from the farmers in Ecuador, and they roast the product themselves and everything's clean. And they're so happy that I reached out and contacted them. And those are the kind of people that, we want to support with our consumer choices. Same for, Whole Foods Market. I talk about them a lot on the show because it's great. It's the wonderful, evolution in the supermarket world over decades. But they pass themselves off as everything in the store is super duper healthy and clean. And they have canola oil prevalent in their hot bar. They sell it on the shelves. They have products containing canola oil. And so you wonder, like, well, where are you going to draw this line? And I want you to draw it further out, even at the expense of profit. But you're getting a starting point by going into a healthy natural food supermarket, but then you have to go all the way to the finish line and scrutinize your choices, especially when they become habitual. And that's my big one. It's like I was buying Paul Newman's red wine and olive oil salad dressing for probably 15 years because it tasted great and it was made with red wine and olive oil. And I never once got my reading glasses out and looked on the back of the label where it had the ingredients listed, and it said canola and or cottonseed oil, olive oil, red wine vinegar, whatever. And so not only they couldn't specify which one, because I guess whichever one was cheaper that came in the big vats that were shipped to the manufacturing plant, but it predominated over whatever olive oil they sprinkled in there to have prominently on the front of the label. And you're like, how can they even be allowed to put that on the front of a label? And same with, the other examples in the supermarket. So, this is exciting to kind of branch that thinking out into a whole nother realm. And when you listen to your show, the commercial for Beauty Counter, you can't even tell it's a commercial because you talk so eloquently, and maybe it's longer than your average commercial, but you learn so much in that commercial message. And it got me inspired to talk to you, even though I'm not a cosmetics person. I think my drawer is like, let's see, there's a toothbrush, there's some toothpaste, I don't even have a comb. I use my fingers, as you can tell if you're watching on YouTube. And I have very little that I put on my body besides Dr. Bronner's and a couple other things. But, I've become recently interested in improving my skincare because mostly I look fit and healthy. And then it's like, geez, I got a lot of wrinkles too. Maybe I should, get into this world. And you sent me some amazing samples. It felt so good to put on my skin. And then I started learning more about, if you were to go down to the store and buy a facial serum or, something that even men are interested in, you could get whapped. And we haven't talked about this yet, but the endocrine disruptor umbrella also includes these estrogenic compounds, which are extremely disturbing to male hormone health. And that's why we have these amazing testosterone decline stats that I reference with my MoFo mission, where the average male testosterone level has declined at a rate of 1% per year since the 80s. So that means your dad at the age of 53 had way more testosterone than you, listener, at the age of 53 or 43. I'm not talking about the decline every year we drop a little bit in our hormones. I'm talking about average to average. So the 37-year-old back in the 80s had way more testosterone than today's 37-year-old. And it's just, an extremely accelerated decline for a lot of reasons. One of them being these estrogenic compounds in the environment, especially stuff that goes on our skin.
So much there. I do the exact same thing with emailing the companies about the thing. And sometimes it's really funny because sometimes I'll get completely different answers. Like there's this one product I got and it said it had natural flavor, and I emailed them on 2 different occasions, maybe a week apart. And I got completely different answers about what it was. I was like, oh, okay.
Maybe that was the second batch they ran was something different.
I think they just made it up, honestly. So many things that you touched on. The estrogenic effects, I think, are really, really a huge problem. I want to ask a question, but it's a really big rabbit hole. How do you feel about like soy, natural phytoestrogenic compounds, like whole soy?
Well, I know the things that are fermented are reducing a lot of the offenses that you might read about from the soy family. Soy and flax are 200 times more estrogenic compounds than any other food. And we know flaxseed oil is a popular supplement, flax seeds to sprinkle on your salad, and then the many foods made with soy, especially as an additive as an agent in food, nutritional supplements and whatever packaged box frozen food. And so it's something that I've tried to stay away from, but I do have a small understanding that certain types of fermented soy can be non-offensive.
Yeah, that was pretty much my approach. Soy is just soy is also common in skincare and makeup. It's so prevalent. And I think is it the most genetically modified crop?
Yeah, it's like
up
99% of soy people
yeah.
is GMO. And so if you're getting something with soybeans, soybean oil, you're into the GMO category.
Yeah.
And, if you don't care about any of this, you're probably still not listening right now. But it's interesting, I just had a thought pop in my head. Like, I don't feel bad when I put antiperspirant on. I don't feel bad when I have, a tofu meal that I used to eat a ton of back when I thought I was eating healthy. And so it really takes kind of a leap of consciousness to make this informed choice that we're going to do this for the sake of, let's say, our longevity rather than an instant payoff. And that part, I'm going to ask you a question here too. Like, I find that's a sticking point for a lot of my everyday, what'd you call them? Regular people or something? Regular citizens. Yeah.
There's like not a word for like non really intense people.
Right. I mean, people are really busy, and I love interacting with, let's say, my old friends where I'm not on stage with a microphone, thereby getting a immediate characterization of the interaction where people are there to listen to me and sit in the chair. So it's more like I got to get 2 cents in when I'm talking with my animated 5 old friends that each like to talk, and then, throw some darts in there if they ask me about health matters or diet or exercise or whatever, and see what sticks. And you realize a lot of time people will make a dismissive comment. They'll say, I've been doing this my whole life. They'll say, well, it sure tastes good, so I still love Ben & Jerry's, even if they put refined industrial seed oils on some of their flavors, which is so shocking because these brands try to convey this hippie, trippy, natural, wholesome image, and then they stick it to you, so they don't really care. Same with the cosmetics you talked about, the people touting their natural foundation that's heavy in lead because they didn't test it.
Wait, what's the question in there? Yes.
No, yeah.
Okay.
You take over. We're not doing Q&A. We're just doing like the B.rad and Melanie show.
You set it up by saying that it made you think of a question. So
yeah, that's right. The question is like, do you see this? I mean, obviously you have a goal of influencing people, sharing information, being a voice, and what's effective. And then where do you see people getting glitched up for whatever reason and not going to town? If it's, a friend, family member, listener, person you randomly meet on the airplane flight, whatever.
Okay, got it. Well, first of all, to that point, this goes back to what you were saying about the way I talk about it on my shows and the quote advertisements. I'm not trying to sell this to anybody. I just find issues that I'm really obsessed with, and I just have to tell people because I learn about this and I'm like, this is so important and this is so life-changing for me. Like, people need to know this. And I honestly think, because the processed food industry, for example, is a huge issue, but I think there's a lot more awareness surrounding it. Like things are, I think the tides are turning, like, especially even Whole Foods. And we talked about like it has its problems, but at least there's like a general awareness of the issue. With the skincare and makeup, I would say, I mean, I think it's just as bad, but we just don't realize it because there's just no education surrounding it. And then it is, like you said, you might not immediately feel the effects. It's a long-term chronic effect that it's having on your body that is going to create health issues down the line, add to your toxic burden. So it's something that's really hard to measure. Yeah. Like you said, it's not like I'm not going to like put on some foundation and then be like, oh, I feel so sick.
I'm
I mean,
tired. I don't feel like going out now.
yeah, I know. So, it can be really, really hard. And I think this is not the answer that you're probably looking for. But I personally, I don't want to take on the responsibility of changing anybody. I just don't like, so I'm not here to convince anybody to make the changes or convince them of why they have to do this. All I can do is share what I've learned, which is like, this is the information. Again, it might not be something that you notice right now with the health effects, but at least from what I've researched and what I've seen, it is something that is going to affect you long-term and your children, future generations, for all the things that we just talked about. So, that's not that helpful, but,
I think that could be the secret right there, is that you have to wait till someone's ready to receive the message. And if you start to try to hack that reality, you're going to get pushed back. And I think that's just the way human nature is. Mark Manson talks about how difficult it is to change someone's mind and how rarely it happens. And so we waste a lot of time arguing just for the sake of doing it, and whatever the strange payoff that we get for soapboxing our views on politics, COVID-19, healthy eating, use of cosmetics. But if you experience that initial resistance or repeat resistance, if it's coming with family, friends, people you interact with a lot, you're just digging a hole and wasting your energy. And I've had to learn that lesson over the years, because I'm so enthusiastic about this stuff and so excited, and I want everybody to get on the journey here. But not if you're not ready. Then we're not getting out of the train station, which is fine.
exactly. And I think that's why I love podcasting, because it's not like I'm showing up, talking to somebody and trying to convince them of something. I'm just like learning and interviewing people and sharing that information, and people who want to listen can. And so I think it's wonderful. And then, I do passive aggressively try to get this into people's lives by, like, skincare, makeup makes the most amazing gifts. So basically the gifts people get from me is like all beauty counter all the time.
Right.
So,
on. Yeah.
Cause then then they want it. And then they experience, I think it's really important for people to realize, I think there's a lot of fear that, what they're doing is working with their products. So, switching might not work, but once you get really good quality stuff that really works and is amazing in their hands and it's safe, it's easier to, it's like the gateway drug, but it's easier to keep going with it. So
I'm interested in it because it's so new to me. I'm trying some of these products that you generously sent me, and I'm going to get involved with this company because it is a rare kind of distinction to see this level of testing going beyond even what's banned in Europe, but that distinction between the FDA and what's routine and customary in Europe, where they're doing a much better job protecting their citizenry. We at least want to get to that standard. So you can either go look around and shop for some beauty counter stuff, or go on a trip to Europe and stock up on every little cosmetic thing that you need, and feel more comfortable flying home with your carry-on bag. But maybe just tell us a little more about what kind of offerings they have, what you like to use, what you've seen from your listeners and followers that's really been a transformation.
Sure. I love this. I love talking about
She's
things
getting teed up, people.
I know.
Yeah, it's an infomercial, right?
I know. No, I love this stuff so much. So I started, it's kind of funny. I started just with the makeup, not the skincare lines. I was like, I'm just going to do the makeup. I'm going to slowly switch over. So I was obsessed. So they have, and ladies, they have everything. So amazing foundation, tons of shades, their new mascara, get their new mascara. It is my favorite. I'm the type historically that has to combine multiple mascaras. This is a lot of girl talk, Brad. So you can just zone out a little bit.
Combinations are important.
Yes. So yes. there was never one mascara that would do all the things I wanted. I had to combine different mascaras. Their new Think Big mascara is amazing. Their old one, I still had to combine, but their new one, get it. Think Big mascara. Their lipstick, their eyeshadows, all of that. But the funny thing about the skincare is I was so sold on trusting their mission and their ingredients. So I wasn't actually using the skincare products because prior to this, I was like, oh, I don't want any skincare products. I'll just use Castile soap, take off my makeup and be done. That's really what I was doing. But I was like, I know other people want stuff and I trust this company, so I'll send samples. So I started giving samples to people and talking about it, and people would report back. And I was like, oh, I got to start trying stuff because people were saying how amazing it was. So then I started trying my own samples and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So they have an overnight resurfacing peel that's incredible. It's basically going to give you the anti-aging benefits of those really pricey peels that people go get done that are full of toxic ingredients and are probably not doing good things to your skin. It's like the safe way to do that. So
what kind of peel are you talking about? They go to a treatment center, and what are they doing to the skin? Because I've heard of it and seen people come back with shiny skin, but I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I haven't done any of the chemical peels, but I know it's a very intense process and the ingredients are no bueno. So
it's super popular, right? I mean, this is
very popular. It's very popular. Yeah. So that's why they created their overnight resurfacing peel, which just you don't peel off anything. It's just like a cream or a gel, like a gel cream, but it has ingredients in it that are going to create that cellular turnover effect. So it's incredible.
What's the cellular turnover effect? Overnight cellular turnover effect with your skin?
Wait, what? That's what it does.
What is it? What does that mean?
So because your skin, so that your skin cells in your face are constantly renewing, and they have a timeline for being renewed. And when you increase that cellular turnover, that's when you can get that young, glowing new skin look. And so there are certain compounds that can increase that. And you'll feel it. It has like I can't really describe it, but you feel stuff happening. What's the word? The effect that I got from it was the most amazing skin I had was when I was in my high pineapple diet phase. Like I was eating so much pineapple, which is really, really high in an enzyme called bromelain, that can help just so many things in your body. But I really noticed the effect on my skin when I was eating a lot of pineapple. I'm not eating a lot of pineapple now because I'm doing slightly lower carb in the fruit world. I'm still high carb, but I'm not doing the pineapple because of the sugar. The overnight resurfacing peel, that's what we're talking about. This has that. It was the first thing that kind of gave me that effect, which is really exciting. You tried their vitamin C serum, I believe, right?
Yeah, I should say I only got interested in this stuff maybe a couple of years ago because I heard Ben Greenfield talking on and on about his wonderful skin serum that he designed with experts and was selling on Keon. And so I said, okay, Ben, I'll try this stuff. And I had no idea the cost of some of these things. So for like $65 for a small bottle, I could not believe it. But I gave it a shot, and it felt great for putting something on my skin for the first time in my adult life, or in my whole life. And, doing this nightly regimen, it really felt like it worked. And I was doing something that was, nourishing rather than just kind of running dry usually because I go in the spa so much and, or the lake, and, you come out and your skin tends to dry up. So I was hooked on his product, and then they discontinued it. And then you stepped into the rescue, and the product that you sent me, you just named it. What is it? The vitamin C?
It's their All Bright C Serum.
Yeah, it's so fantastic. I feel great. And so I want to talk to the male listeners here, like get into your skincare a little bit. I'm not about to go wearing lipstick or putting on foundation, but this thing has become, a regular key element of my routine. And I'm really glad I think I'm doing my skin a solid. And we're going to check back like in a year to see if my wrinkles have entirely disappeared. Right now I'm halfway there. So
I
follow
love
along,
it.
listeners, follow along.
Yeah, that's definitely one of their most popular ones. I'm obsessed with it. Also in the wrinkle department. So they have skincare lines. So their anti-aging line is called Counter Time. They have a counter match for normal skin. They have counter start for sensitive. And if you have acne or oily prone skin, which I had really bad acne, growing up, and I did in high school, I was on birth control for it. And then I did Accutane, which looking back, so they have their counter control line, which is really, really amazing for that. And I've heard amazing feedback from people saying it's the first thing that's worked for their acne. So, yeah, that's amazing. And then their shampoo and conditioner, I love. And then they have like they have everything, body lotions. They have, products for babies. So, like diaper creams and, baby washes. And so yeah.
Love it. So I think taking it big picture here with the show, the reason I wanted to talk further about this is because I know you to be an authentic, legitimate person who really is living and breathing this stuff. And so am I now. I'm a big fan. And I think it's a great example of an area where we can educate ourselves further, look deeper than what's presented on the store shelves at the nearby pharmacy chain store, and try to upgrade without any additional time or energy required. Like, I'm going to talk to you probably on a future show about adding this to your exercise program, or spending some more time fasting or doing things where the person really has to get psyched and motivated. But this is simple, changing your consumer purchasing decisions to make a huge improvement in your health. I believe you had the estrogenic expert on your show, Dr. Anthony J, or another one.
I just had, the reason I was talking about the soy is I just had Dr. Neil Bernard, but he has a very different opinion. No, who was the estrogen person?
He wrote a book called Estrogeneration, Anthony J. And
we might have been talking about him offline.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I was captivated by his very crisp message that, these are the areas that we got to watch out for. Plastics touching your food and drink is highly estrogenic. That's so easy to manage, where you can go and buy the glass bottle instead. You don't microwave stuff that's in a plastic nasty bowl, because then the heat will further drive the plastic molecules into the food. And so just these little tips that don't require pain and suffering, and you can up your game dramatically. That was really memorable to me. But one of them was, a few of them were the stuff that you wash your clothes in, put on your skin, and consume. And so those are kind of the centerpiece that we really deserve to zero in on this stuff and make some changes and protect ourselves. And now it's reminding me of our friend Dr. Paul Saladino's quote, where he said, we're talking about going from level 9 to level 10, or level 6 to level 8. And we really don't know what it's like to feel better, because we have our own baselines. And that's where we really deserve to be open-minded and do some experimenting with a crazy 30-day carnivore diet experiment. Because guess what? Maybe you'll feel better. Maybe you'll feel better if you can, even psychologically better, to clean out your beauty game and put products in that don't have toxins in there. And so that part, bumping up to another level, even when you don't have an extreme complaint right now, that's what I'm all about. Because there's no other way to live, in my opinion. You can't settle, right?
I could not agree more. And like you said, there are so many little things that we can make adjustments for every single day, like not grabbing the receipts if you don't need the receipt. And that thermal paper has toxic compounds in it. So I always feel bad. Yeah. I feel bad because I'll be at the self-checkout, and then I always let the receipt print and I just walk away.
Get a plastic bag, pull the receipt out, throw it in the garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It's everywhere.
But
all right, Melanie, you killed it again. Thank you for enlightening this crew and having a great discussion. tell us more about your latest and greatest. You launched this interesting product. How do we find you, follow you? Let's hear it.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back, Brad. I said this in the beginning, but you're just like one of the most fantastic, amazing human beings on the planet. And I mean that.
Thank you.
But so for listeners, I have two shows. I have the Intermittent Fasting podcast and the Melanie Avalon Biohacking podcast. That's the one that Brad was on. Have a lot of Brad and I have had a lot of similar guests between those shows. So if people like this show, they might like that show and vice versa. I did recently launch a supplement line, and it's for the same reason that we talked about all in this show. Oh, that's an industry with a lot of sketchy stuff. The supplement industry.
You did. You talk about the research you did to find a clean product, and it was like an ordeal, huh?
Yeah. I with what I've learned with the supplement industry, I honestly just want to make my own version of everything now that I'm currently taking. I want to make my own version because I just don't trust a lot of the brands out there. But so avalonx.us is where you can get my Serrapeptase supplement. That's a proteolytic enzyme that does a lot of things. You take it in the fastest state, and it breaks down potentially problematic proteins in your body. So it helps things like allergies and inflammation where your body is reacting to proteins. It clears your sinuses, clears brain fog. It's one of the supplements I've been taking for the longest. And so that's why I wanted to make my own version for the first one. But there are a lot of other ones coming soon. And then my main website is melanieavalon.com, and I'm Melanie Avalon, all the places like Instagram and really just, and then on Facebook, I have a few different groups. So if you search for Melanie Avalon on Facebook, I actually have a clean beauty and safe skincare group there as well.
Ooh, what do they talk about? Just some back and forth from real people?
Yeah, real people. We have about, I don't want to misquote it. We have over 1,000 members, but people share product reviews. It's not just Beauty Counter. It's all clean beauty and safe skincare. So we do polls, people share their reviews. I do a giveaway every single week with Beauty Counter stuff in there as well. So it's a fun place to be. My main Facebook hub though is IF Biohackers. That's my main group. So that's where I interact with people if you want to talk to me. Yeah.
Good stuff. Keeping busy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everybody. Dum, 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 dum.